Okay, let me talk about research questions in qualitative research. They are open-ended questions, very general, broad questions. It's an important part in doing research is to be able to ask a good question. We have topics that we want to study, and we need to find a question that needs to be answered by our research, whether you're doing quantitative research or qualitative research. And you need to frame that question in a way that it's not too broad and not too narrow. It needs to be what we call researchable. That means that we need to frame the question at a scope where we can actually gather some data to address that question. And so we'll pose in qualitative research a very open-ended question like, what does it mean to learn qualitative research in this classroom? Now notice, by saying this classroom, I've suddenly narrowed it to just this group where I can gather data. If I just said, what does it mean to do qualitative research without narrowing it to the classroom, well, that could be qualitative research in a community setting, in the Boy or Girl Scouts, in my church organization, but narrowing it to the classroom means that I've got a scope where I can actually gather data and come up with some answers for that. Every once in a while, students will come forward with questions that are so big and so broad that, first of all, they can't adequately gather data to address them, nor can they finish the project in a reasonable time, like in a semester or in a year. And my wording that I often use to them is, let's take the scope down from the planet and bring it down to Earth. And that's conveyed, let's bring it down to something where we can actually gather some data and come up with some reasonable answers to address this question. We're going to pose this question not as something with scales or a checklist or specific answers, but just a general question. What does it mean to learn qualitative research in this classroom? And then as a qualitative researcher, what I do with that information, let's say I might interview some of the students in the room, or I might have a focus group, then I take that information and build some codes and some themes to see what are the different perspectives on learning qualitative research in the classroom. I'm not going to come up with one perspective. Qualitative research builds the complexity of the situation. So I'm going to get different perspectives, because all of us don't go at the world the same way, or we don't all experience this classroom the same way. So I'm going to come up with multiple perspectives, and I'm going to describe these as themes in my final qualitative report. So the process is a topic focused into a question that's manageable, where I can gather some data, analyze that data, and come up with a qualitative written report.